Okay, so when you first jump onto SARTopo.com, this is typically what you see. Sometimes you see the introduction page before it. There's everything is done on the web here, right? There is an offline version of this. We generally don't use it that much, and even the offline version still uses a web browser and pulls maps that have been saved to the hard drive. So for all intents and purposes, this is our application phase here, kind of thing. So, and you notice when you first come to this website, you can see this link right there is SARTopo.com's, and then it's got a bunch of stuff with kind of a coordinate baked in there. It's a little hard to read, but it says 39.13, 100.54. What that's telling you is that the center of the screen is centered about that point. And there's the other part of what that's telling you is that this map is not saved. So you notice as I drag this map around and zoom in, the link actually changes, right? But the point is, this is just, you're looking at a read-only interface. You guys understand what I mean by read-only? You're not actually changing anything about this. You're not saving anything. This is nothing specific yet. It's just a blank canvas, so to speak. So I look at that a couple times because sometimes you get kicked out of websites and stuff. So one of the first things I do is I look at that website and make sure, okay, I'm not in a saved map right now. Just a quick bit about that. Okay, so let's get you logged in. So on the far right hand side here, you'll see this sign up button and a login. Hopefully you've already created a login. So this is what I was telling you guys the other day, that when you first log into this, you want to really make sure that you use the same login every time. I know a bunch of us have all different emails and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and log in under the same email account that I've been doing forever. So here I am logged in. And you can see the top right hand corner there, it's got my name. So if you might have noticed on this right hand panel here, there were some things that said pro. Now they don't say that anymore. Because what happens when you scan those QR codes is you joined our team account. And our team account is like the highest of high accounts that we can have for accessibility within SARTopo. You have all the custom features, you have all the printing ability, you have everything you could ever want. It's awesome. And all the live stuff too. So, okay, so this top banner, there's a few things that I want to point out here. When you start practicing SARTopo, sometimes you'll have a question. This on this top left here, if you can see my cursor. Yeah, okay, so right there, there's a help button. I know most of us are kind of averse to help buttons, but I promise you, this is one of the most interactive and useful help things you'll ever find. So go to the help and you go to user guide, and let's say you want to add a waypoint. You can just start typing waypoint in that search bar over there, and there's all kinds of good information about how to add it, right? Now there's a new feature here for adding a photo. So I encourage you, if you want to play with this a little bit, feel free to dive into that help menu a little bit. To the right of that, you've got this enter coordinates or location name. It's just basically a search bar. So you can type in Mount Vernon. You could type in Mount Baker. There's, it's a pretty useful search bar. So it's worth playing around with that. It gets you kind of zoomed in on the spot. But just keep in mind, if you're kind of vague about something, like let's just say you say Boulder, there's a Boulder, Colorado, there's probably a Boulder, Washington, so it might jump around on you a bit. Settings, we're not going to go over that a whole lot right now. This little box right here, you guys see in that little box in the top right? That box, by default, is set to give me the information where my cursor's at, which is really handy because like one of the things you see here that we use a lot actually, when you're looking at a contour map, sometimes it's not super obvious what the topography is doing for you. So if you just drag your cursor around and you see the elevations going up, you get a pretty quick indication right off the bat what you're looking at. Are you looking at a ridge line, or are you looking at a drainage, right? So I use this quite a bit as well. And like I said, that's just focused on what your cursor is sitting at. Okay, your data. This your data is a place where we live quite a bit. It's how we organize everything. And you can see, for me, there's quite a bit going on this far left-hand side. So everything kind of falls under these umbrellas here. So these are like different sub-teams, we'll call them. And everybody's gonna have this one here that says your data. That means it is specific to you. I don't have access to that. Nobody else here has access to that. That is just yours and yours alone. And within that, you can see there's PDFs. So when you generate a map, a paper, a PDF copy of a map, that's where it'll save. If you're out marching around out here and you create an app track on your phone and you want to save it to your account, it'll save it there, so you can click on that and you can look at them. So like let's just kind of step through these a little bit. So PDFs, I have all kinds of stuff here saved to my account, right? And it tells me when it was last updated. It lets me search here at the top. So it helps me find what I'm looking for fairly quickly. You do obviously have to make sure that you give something a good title when you're titling it, but it's pretty useful in that way. Layers is kind of a advanced topic. I'll just touch on it real lightly, but one of the beauties of SARTopo is I call it like a skeleton program, because what it does is because it's web-based, it has the ability to A, auto-update all the time, and B, you can pull in live resources. So I have here from Alaska, you guys didn't hear that, I go up there quite a bit. Alaska GIS satellite, that is a GIS, you guys ever heard of that term before? Geographic Information Systems. It's like states, counties, government entities are basically required to, or they maybe not required, but almost every jurisdiction has a GIS department that they use for taxation purposes typically. But it happens to be some of the best resources you'll ever find for good satellite imagery. And Alaska is no different. Alaska has a phenomenal, I think it's down to like 3 centimeters or 5 centimeters, which means every 3 centimeters on the ground is a pixel. It's like incredibly high resolution, right? So anyway, so this is basically just a website that I've linked, and I've pulled that into SARTopo. SARTopo knows how to interpret it, and now I have a layer that I can look at that is custom, right? And I can change how I look at that. Map sheets. So let's say I've actually used this on a search before, where map sheets, you get some mountain climber who looks at a mountain range. He's like, oh, I'm gonna hit this mountain, this mountain, this mountain. And he literally draws a napkin sketch. You can take that sketch and you can stretch it, you can twist it, you can do whatever you need to do to try and overlay it over the top of your actual map in the background and try to make sense of where they had planned to go, right? So it gives you some good information there. Another example of that would be like national parks, things like that. Larrabee State Park, they'll have park maps that they create. You can take those park maps and you can scan it, you can download it, whatever, and you can import it into here, and you basically can overlay it. So the whole idea with this is you're stacking information so that you can look at what's going on and help you make good decisions when you're planning a search. And then icons, it's not super exciting. You guys are familiar with the ICP, the incident command structure. We have the incident command post symbol, stuff like that. Like I could create special icons. It's not that exciting. And then, so that's everything I just discussed was falling under the umbrella of my data, right? My personal stuff so that nobody else has access to it. Then it's all my team accounts, my sub-team accounts. Now, everything we're doing here today is under the umbrella of Skagit County SAR. So hopefully you see that. You guys see Skagit County SAR in yours? Cool. So everything falls under that. So you should have practice play, you should have GSAR, and is there baseline? It gave you 3. Doesn't really matter that much, but the fact that you have any one of those is a good thing. And then, yeah. So that's basically how you utilize your data option up here. Okay. Now we get into some of the fun stuff here. I want to break this down into 2 categories. Map layers, which is how you view the world. It's how you perceive information that's out there. And then map objects. Map objects is stuff you add to a map to give it data. You actually, I'm saying that my incident command post is located here. That's SARCom right there, right? If I add a waypoint, say, team 4 was at this location at 14:20 hours. That's data that I've added to the map, and it recognizes that that is something that's not offered in the world, right? That's something I've added to the map. So first we're going to look at map layers. Map layers, like I said, it's just, you're not changing anything, it's just how you perceive things in the world. So the first thing you should look at here is this section here says base layers. If you click that first drop down, you have quite a few options there, right? And notice Google layers come up as well. So you have quite a bit of functionality built into this with I'll just pull up a Google map, right? This is literally the Google map. When you go to maps.google.com, you have all this information made available to you. And it's pretty interactive, just the same as Google Maps is. I can grab this little dude down here in the lower right, and I can throw him right here, and it'll pop up with a new tab on my browser and say, this is what it looks like there, right? So this isn't really new information to you, but it's just one more tool. One more tool to help you out there. And I should note, for some weird reason, this has been this way since day one. If you want a Google layer, you should always put the Google layer you want on first. And what I mean by that is, the next step of this is stacking base layers. So I have Google Maps up. I want to stack, I'm going to pull up this satellite one. It's probably one you guys don't have access to, but that's okay. It's just kind of goes back to my point about having custom options here. And notice I have 2 base layers shown here, and I'm able to change the opacity between the 2. So this is just a tool we have. So you can kind of see there's all these dots coming through here from Google Maps, but I also have some satellite overlay coming over the top of that. But if I go to my second one here, where I'm stacking base layers, I don't have any Google options. So that's why I always recommend, if you want a Google layer, like Google Satellite is actually quite handy. One of the first things I'll do is I'll put Google Satellite on top, and then my map builder hybrid, let's say, which is another standard one we use, I'll put that on secondarily. And I should elaborate on these first two ones here. Map builder, topo, and hybrid are 2 of the probably the most common ones we use. We do use the satellite view obviously a lot because it tells you tree cover, it tells you snow, it tells you a lot of stuff like that. But map builder topo is kind of the baked in layer that comes with the software. So like I said, one of my first steps I'll typically will do here is I'll put it on satellite, and then, which is a Google satellite, and then map builder topo, and I'll play with the opacity between the 2. Is everybody getting some functionality here so far with the slider bar and layering? Is it making sense how to layer things? And you can layer a bunch of stuff, right? So like I'm gonna go cruise on up to some mountainous terrain here, so you kind of get an idea how this becomes useful. I'm gonna look at Oyster Dome area. So I've got a satellite, but this is just nothing but trees. This isn't super helpful, right? So, okay, so I'm gonna drag some map builder topo in there. Now I can see some of the contour lines a little better. I like it. But let's just say it's still a little hard to kind of see what I'm looking at here. I'm gonna add in shaded relief is one of my favorites. Really helps kind of bring out the structure of the land, the topography, because we spend a lot of our time cross country, right? Like we use trails, but a lot of our time out there is spent just beating the brush. And so the more time you spend looking at something like this, you go, oh, I like this little route. If I'm on this trail right here, this road, and I want to get, say my subject's up here, this really makes it clear to me this is a good passable route. So I might throw in a line there and make myself a little route to get from here through here and up in this little valley. So it's worth spending some time stacking your layers, playing with it quite a bit to see what works best for you. And there's a lot of layers to choose from. And as you get better with this and you play with it more, I can start showing you guys how to add the custom sources. Like I showed you how the NASA satellite. There's weather stuff. You ever heard of ADSB? It's the aircraft transmitting. It's aircraft. Oh, why can't I think of it? It's basically every aircraft that's over a certain size has to have a transponder on it. It communicates to the satellites. It says, I am here. And it tells the world location, airspeed, and altitude.
Scroll down, it's like a standard line there.
Yeah. So like for example, I'm just gonna come on out here, zoom out a little bit, and I am going to show you that real quick. Kind of jumping ahead a touch, but this is really no aircraft. Let's go down here, give it a sec. Sometimes it takes a sec. One thing about this room too is we're all pulling from the same Wi-Fi, and then we don't have the best Wi-Fi here. It's been a problem for everyone. If I have to, I'll go down towards, but there's probably a plane in this area. I'd be very surprised if there's not. Let's go down south. Hey, there's one. So, for example, I can click on this guy, and let's say this is your helicopter that you're expecting. We've asked the Navy before, hey, can you turn on your transponder for us? And if they're nice, sometimes they'll do it for you. They're military, so they don't always do it. But you get a little bit of information here. You get this guy's flying at 20,000 feet. He is climbing at 1,500 feet a minute. It's a de Havilland Dash 8, if you're familiar with those planes. I can click on View Aircraft, and it will take me to a web page. It tells me about the owner. It tells me about recent history trips for that aircraft. So like I have used this before at the end of a mission when we found remains of a person who fell off a cliff, and we were trying to figure out where they were. I was able to find a searching aircraft, and I found that they did this circle deal for like an hour, you know, corkscrewing in the same spot. It's like, well, it's pretty obvious where they're at, right? So it's handy to be able to pull that kind of information out of it. So I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Let's go through some of these one by one a little bit, because I want you guys to kind of see what's going on here. Okay, so I have these layers pulled up. I kind of like them. I've got some good shading going on there. Contours. So if you're ever looking at a map that doesn't have contours built into it, like let's say it's just a satellite image, like the Google satellite image, right? I realize this is a little harder to see compared to my laptop screen, but I clicked on contours and it basically highlighted all the contours in the area. So you can just throw contours over the top of anything you're looking at. You could have nothing on the screen. Like let's say you're looking at an area that doesn't have US Forest Service. So the screen is just white because there's no Forest Service roads in that area. If you turn on contours, it'll still show you the contours of that area. It's just an overlay. Slope angle shading is a huge one we use. Any guesses why slope angle shading might be important? I'll give you a hint. This is a dangerous area. It's blue. There's some black in there here and there. Some black up there. This stuff right here is pretty reasonable. It's terrain. The red is where it starts to get really sketchy for hikers. Anybody have any thoughts on why that might be a problem? Why we care about that when we're searching?
Well, that might be where the person hurt themselves.
It might be where exactly. So if I'm looking at this and I see this parking area right here, I see all that. I'm going, man, there's a lot of hazards out here. I'm going to flag that as a hazard, right? This person could have taken taken a wrong step. And you can kind of see if I wanted to zoom in there, you can see how it really transitions from a reasonable parking area to just falling off a cliff. Which, if you've ever been to Sandwich Overlook, that's what it looks like, right? So that's one reason. Another reason is if we're in the mountains, like right now is a perfect time to be concerned about this. You get up higher in the mountains and you should start being concerned about avalanches. You know, higher up in the elevations. It's a little early yet, but
Chuckanut's closed right now.
Chuckanut's closed, yeah.
Rock site.
There you go. Shoot, I think it was 3 years ago. Rachel, she's on the back door there, back wall. We had to search for this gal who went into the mountains, and it was a super avalanche-prone area. This will tell you down here. There's a little key, tells you what the slopes are. So if you're familiar with avalanches, you'll know that anything between 30 and 45 degrees or so is a significant risk for avalanches. So if I'm looking at this, I am very concerned about what I might be seeing in certain areas. Obviously, this isn't the right area, right? But if I'm higher elevations where there actually is snow, and you use this to tell you what the slopes are looking at, that'll give you a good idea of what your avalanche risk is. So geology, we don't use a whole lot. Public lands, we don't use a lot. Parcel data, we actually do use this a fair amount. So let's say we're searching in an urban area, and we're searching for a missing person, a dementia walkaway. I hate to say it, but these days, probably at least half, if not well over half, of our call-outs are for dementia walkaways. It's just a sad fact that, you know, people get a little older, they get a little loose in the mind, and they just start wandering. So we get called to look out for them, and they usually start out in some little neighborhood like this. Well, we want to know whose property we're looking at, and we can print a map, or we can create a map that'll tell us who owns the property, or I can use this to, if you notice here, there's a little drop down. I change it to ownership. You can go from ownership to address, I think it is. Site address. So this is handy because a lot of people don't have house numbers anymore. You know, you might be walking a neighborhood, and let's say I've had this happen to me before, where I'm looking for a missing person, and I come across a property that I can't identify. I can't figure out what house number it is. And Google on your phone isn't that particularly helpful with figuring this out either. Sometimes it's a challenge to figure out exactly what the house number is. So I can click on parcel data, and I've got all these numbers that pop up, and I can call it in and say, hey, I need a sheriff to come talk to the owners of 3648 Washington Avenue, right? And then they at least know what you're looking at. Structures is one we sometimes use. It's not super helpful. It's kind of one of those things where if you're out in the Boone Tuolees, maybe it's useful for identifying a little cabin that's been picked up, or a fire shelter kind of thing, an overlook. So it can be useful, not huge. The rest of these, not huge. Fire activity.
I've used that for summertime.
Yeah.
Vacations.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
If you ever go to Hawaii, like I'll pull up Hawaii and just actually kind of see what's going on here. Fire activity is handy. We've had searches that have butted up against active fires. I was using this. I have friends that live on the Big Island, and they live in one of the volcanic zones. And I was actually able to see where the lava was getting picked up. Because what this is, this MODIS, these MODIS and V2RS, they're basically, or 7RS, whatever it's supposed to be. They're just different satellites that fly overhead, and their purpose in life is to fly overhead and look for hotspots. And they automatically log these to sites like this. So I'm not getting much here for that, but let's just zoom in on California. There's always a fire in California, and look at that. So it takes a second, but the little asterisk that pops up, that'll actually show you, this is like a pinpoint spot that's been detected in, I think, the last 36 hours or 48 hours, something like that. And then if you go to an active burn, like a bigger burn area, you'll actually see, so like this is an active fire here. See how it's got this hatched out area? It gives you an idea of what you're dealing with there. So if I had a search that was happening, along this trail, obviously I'm going to be pretty concerned about that. So it's just another resource to look at pretty quickly. Cell coverage. Cell coverage is handy. Take it with a grain of salt. It's because what it is it's the cell phone providers. Snohomish County, we're up here now. It's the cell phone providers. Their claim, right? It's marketing, basically. Is it useful? Yeah, we've definitely used it, and we've had pretty good luck with it. But like I said, take it with a grain of salt. It's not the most useful all the time. So that's pretty much your standard overlays. Now we're going to get into things like wind plot. This is handy for, especially like if we're planning a search that we know is going to involve canines, we're going to want to know what the wind is doing, right? So it's a little hard to see. I'm also colorblind, so I'm going to focus out here. But I can see there are, I'm just going to call it green just for I'm guessing it's somewhere around 30 miles an hour. I couldn't tell you for sure, but.
I think you're
10,
20.
10, yeah, there we go. See you guys? Glad you're here. Yeah, so this gives you an idea of what the general wind's doing. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good idea of what the wind is doing in that area. And you can see to the right of it, there's it says plus 18 hours. I can change it to now. I can change it to 24 hours from now. So like right before we deploy a canine team, I'll try and look at this if I haven't had a chance to get out to the spot we're deploying to. And I can say, okay, the wind is expected to be from the west to east, right? And give them an idea of what they're dealing with so they concur that it's a good spot to go drop into. Avalanche, similar thing, what I was talking about earlier. It's like slope angle shading, but it actually has an avalanche forecast built into it. Avalanche, we'll just turn on avalanche real quick and we'll go over to someplace like Baker and see if there's a forecast for it. So this whole area right now is broken into a west slopes north category. And if I click this get more information, it pops up with another tab. Again, the beauty of using the internet is everything is accessible to you. So when we get further into the winter, you'll actually see some legitimate avalanche testing information here. Like it'll take you to websites that say, we've been out here, we've tested the snow conditions, it's not safe, kind of thing, hazardous, right? They'll give you ratings. So it's a good tool to have if you're ever going out and about. Weather stations, this is handy. So weather stations, again, it's live data. Right now, this Brannian Creek at South Bay Drive at Wickersham is flowing at 24 cubic feet per second, right? And I can pull up a little chart that shows me how it's been trending over the last 24 hours. No, more than that, a week. Looks like a week. So, and then if you click on something like that, notice how it says source gauge page. Again, internet, wonderful. It takes me to, I'll go ahead and run through that real quick. It takes me to another page here. This is the USGS's data, right? So in 2021, I think it was, we had those really bad flood events going on here. We were hitting this pretty often to check on the Skagit River because it was flooding, and this was a great tool and it was very easy to get to with SARTopo. So that's a handy thing to track. There's also, so that was just for water. There's temperature, there's wind, there's snowpack, there's air quality. So if it's a smoke thing, like we were talking about fires earlier, again, we've had call outs that have happened before in areas where there's a fire nearby. We want to know what the nearest smoke reading is in that area. Or if you're just wanting to go do a pleasure hike, you can pull up air quality from this map and it'll tell you that information. Quite handy. I showed you aircraft already. It's pretty cool function. Shared locations. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but shared locations is neat because it's a relatively new function. What it gives you is if I'm on my phone, I have the ability to turn my tracker on. So I'm gonna go and hop into my app. And notice I'm still not in a saved map yet. We still haven't done anything to this map, but I can turn on my location. Just doing this real quick, share location. And I'm sharing this with Skagit County SAR. So in a minute, my location should pop up. Jim's tracking right now. And apparently so am I. So this is cool because, like, let's say you're headed to the scene and you're coming from a different direction. Let's say you're not coming here first. You can turn on share location, and I can pull up the map and I can see, oh, you're at this spot, right? So I have a rough idea where you're at, how long it might be for you to get there. And this is just a dot in time. This is not necessarily a track that you're creating. You can create tracks and we can share tracks, but that's not what this is intended for. So very handy function. We do use this a bit.
Question, does that work like in areas without the cell coverage, like going off of like
Great question. So
like Gaia's tracking, that kind of thing through the app?
yeah, so it will use your last provided location if you lose cell service.
Okay.
And if you get a bump of cell service along the way, it'll update as well as it can. Similar to when we start talking about cell phone tracks. So yeah, so if you're on your phone and you lose cell service, which happens all the time, it'll just basically pick up where it leaves off. We're working on doing a thing where even if you're, well, two things. One, we're working on getting Starlink. We've gotten approval for it, all that kind of stuff. So as soon as we get Starlink, we're going to be deploying that in the field. We're basically set up the command post. When you come back to base, all the information you've created, you've tracked, and you've added waypoints and markers, and clues, and things like that. All of that, as soon as you come into the Starlink sphere, the network, it'll automatically update this map, which is super handy, right? That goes for tracks, like I said, waypoints, all that kind of stuff. Good information there. And then most of the stuff below this, I don't want to get into a whole lot. There's more features here, but it's just really not that applicable for this little introduction. So I want to show you guys adding objects to your map and saving and whatnot. So let's go ahead and take one last look at the search bar, right? The address bar. Notice how it says SARTopo.com and it's got these coordinates. Remember that. So this is basically showing you that there's nothing saved to this map. I'm just viewing only. Even the information you see here with Jim and myself showing as shared locations, that's just real-time data, right? That's all that is. It's not actually like a saved waypoint or marker or anything like that. But things change as soon as I want to add a marker. There's two ways to do this. There's basically the quick way, and then there's the comprehensive way. The comprehensive way, which is foolproof, is you click that little orangish add button, right? That gives you the full menu of anything you want to add to the map, whether it's a special layer you want to add, whether it's a marker, a clue, whatever you want to do. The quick way, and the way I recommend doing this at first, is by right-clicking, and then I'm going to add a marker. You guys see how I got that? Just right-click anywhere on the map, anywhere from here to here on the screen, and I'm going to call this Incident Command Post, or ICP. And you want to use shorter abbreviations whenever possible, because it does get very cloudy, very messy on the screen. So I gave it a label of ICP. Down here, you guys see where I'm clicking right there? It says Style. I'm going to grab my Incident Command Post, which is right there. That's one of two, maybe three symbols you guys really should know. I would say these three are the most important, right? There's Incident Command Post. So anytime you're given a map, you're going to want to look for that for sure. And then this one is just a clue. It's, let's say we found an orange beanie that matches the subject's description. That's going to get a clue, and we're going to log that. And then this little circle with the X in it, That's what we use for, it's kind of the standard symbol for last known location, or LKP, last known position. So I was making this the instant command post, so I gave it that label, that style, change that style down there, and it's got a bunch of other information here. You got coordinates, you've got folder, we'll talk about that in a second. But right now I've got a style. Let's say I accidentally clicked over here, right? And I put it in the wrong spot. I wanted it to be right there, but I accidentally have it right there. No big deal. When you're in this edit mode and you see this little screen up, you can drag this around. So we click OK. Okay. Something happened, right? As soon as you add data to the map, SARTopo will automatically prompt you to save it. So this is what comes up automatically. And this sometimes is dependent on the fact that you're logged in. So notice I'm logged in, so that's good. But this pops up and asks me, what do you want to do with this? You've added information to the map. This is information that's not out in the ether. This is your information that you provided. So I'm going to call this, I usually like to throw a date in there first. And I go year, month, day, practice 1. And I'm going to save this in practice and play, which hopefully you guys all have access to. So again, I've named it, and I can change the name later if I want to. I am saving it to practice and play. The sharing, don't worry about that a whole lot right now, just leave it to secret, that's fine. Basically it makes it so that people out on the internet can't just find this map, there's sensitive information. Save. Notice where my cursor's at, right there, the save button, it's about to disappear. It's about to disappear, the map reloads. The save button has been replaced with an icon with an eye on it, right? And notice this code up here, GG97A09. Now I'm in a saved map. So anything I add to this map, it will save for me. So if you guys want to take a stab at this, go ahead and go to SARTopo. You can open a new tab if you want, whatever you want to do. Go to SARTopo.com. And this is a randomly generated code. So SARTopo.com/M for maps, save maps, /GG golf 97 alpha 09. You guys read that? This is where one of the other functionalities of SARTopo really starts to shine. Awesome. Now, as soon as you guys navigate to this, we're all working in the same map. And because it's a live internet program, everybody can add their contribution to this map, right? Inherently, I gave you guys, I believe, write access to practice and play, and then update access to the GSAR, which is what we might use for actual missions. There's a reason for that. We try and limit the ability for someone to go in and wipe a map out. So how this works is in practice and play, you guys should be able to add anything you want to this map. So go ahead and try and add a marker. Right click somewhere in this neighborhood of SARTopo, of SARCOM. And I believe by default, you should be able to delete someone else's icon, their marker. You can move it around if you want to. You can play with it. But the idea is on an actual mission, we want you to be able to affect your own stuff, but not affect other people's. Because it does accidentally happen from time to time. It's not a control thing, it's just a control thing. So give that a whirl. I'm hoping to see some icons pop up here. Awesome, the best marker, love it. So, finally proved it, right? This is actually a live program that you can update. So the beauty of this is when we have a mission that spools up and we're trying to rapidly deploy our resources, right? One of the things we'll do is we'll look at the map, we'll have a team of people, like in a perfect world, right? We will have a team of people who are getting ready to head out into the field. Like their packs are ready. They get in the trucks. They head out to the parking lot of the trailhead, whatever they're going to, and they get ready to do the most obvious search, which is like just up the trail, right? That's the best case scenario. They just find this person on the trail. If there has to be more searching done, you're going to have people that hang back, and they're going to look at the map and go, okay, I see all these properties. I see all these buildings here. What do we need to do to search the rest of this area? And so they'll be coming up with additional searches and things like that. So you can have a team in the field who is actively doing their assignment, and if they're in cell service, they get done with their first initial assignment, all of a sudden a new assignment pops up on their phone, right? It's beautiful. So that it all kind of works symbiotically. It does require cell service, sure, but we more often than not can get around that. Awesome. So I see a few markers. I like it. So now we're working the same map. So let's go through a few more of these options I have here on the map when I'm trying to add things. So all I did was I right-clicked, right? I right-clicked on the map, and notice that this is what pops up. I just randomly right-clicked. You see, that's the coordinates of where I right-clicked, right there. And there's a handy little copy button because it's handy to email this out and you don't want to have to type it, right? So they started adding these little copy to your clipboard buttons everywhere in there. I want to go through these options really quick. These are great, super handy to have. So position and elevation. If you ever want to know anything and everything about the location you clicked on, you can click position and elevation. It'll tell you elevation, this cross slope of the area right there. It'll tell you how to read out that location in all the different coordinate formats. What's your question?
I just noticed that when you right click and add the coordinates, it looked like it was in degrees decimals, right, for that long.
Yep.
Is there a way to change
100%.
the format of that?
100%. Okay. So your question, real quick. Let's go through that. So this is under the settings. I didn't get into this, but it's really easy to change. So right here, coordinate system. So I click settings, and then this menu pops up. You've got your primary and your secondary. SARTopo recognizes anytime you put anything in there, like let's say latitude 48, longitude 151 kind of thing, right? If you type that in, it'll automatically know how to convert that from that to USNG, to UTM, to any other coordinate format system that we might use. So I use this, I use degrees, which is decimal degrees, and then USNG as my secondary. Personally, because when I'm on the computer like this, mapping, a lot of times I'm jumping back and forth between Google and because somebody will tell me their location and I have to figure out where that is, right? I don't have an actual location. So Google will use lat long in decimal degrees. So if I find a location on Google that I like, I can just copy from Google and then paste it into here and it shows up all copacetic. So it's not a big deal. This is totally preference, but that's just what I found to be most useful for me. So yes, if you change this from degrees and then your primary becomes something else, instead of right-clicking and degrees pops up, it'll be USNG or UTM.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. So another super handy thing I want you guys to be familiar with. NOAA forecast. This is a beautiful thing here. Anytime we're spooling up a search, especially this time of year, we really want to know what's the weather going to be like. You noticed how Todd was pretty on the spot about that? It affects us, man. That search I was talking about, the Rachel search a couple years ago, they got called out for that search, and by the time they got the call, or by the time she was missing to the time we finally got searchers able to get out there, 6 feet of snow had dumped on her. So that makes a massive risk for avalanches. That makes a massive risk for safety of your teams. You can get buried out there, quite literally. And I want to show you one of the cool features about this is it pinpoints the weather at the location where I told it to, right? So I was in this map and I right-clicked and I clicked NOAA forecast. It takes the weather from that spot location. So if I go back to my map and I jump up to like Mount Baker, right? I'm going to click on the peak of Acre right here and do the same thing. I want you to see right now, there's not a satellite, there's not a weather station up there that I know of, but it uses weather stations and some calculations to figure out what that weather should be. And it also updates a forecast right there. If you open this weather tab up, NOAA weather forecast, you can basically click outside of this green box in this little window right there. You can click around that and it'll update the weather for that location. And I want you to really focus in on this altitude here, this elevation, because it's calculating all these numbers based on this elevation, right? So let's say I'm looking at an area and it decides to pick a spot that's slightly less elevation. I want to know like the next bump up. So I will click, well, this is as high as it gets in this area. But let's say I accidentally clicked the foothills of Mount Baker, like down here. So now my forecast is it's adjusted for an elevation of 6,850. This is really handy because we spend a lot of our time at that threshold between snow and rain and sleet and all that stuff. So we want to know if we're going to just be in a wet rainstorm and it's just going to suck and you're just going to get wet, or if we're actually going to get dumped. Okay, so that's forecast. That's a really handy thing. Simulated view, I don't want to get into that, but it's a way that basically takes you. We shouldn't all do it because it actually does use quite a bit of bandwidth and will bog these things down. But it's basically like if I'm standing at the top of Baker, it gives you an actual simulated view, like a wireframe view of the mountains and the topography around you. Not that exciting. A lot of people get excited about it. Parcel info, same thing we talked about earlier. It'll error fetching. It'll pull up the information there. So everything that we covered here, this is all things you can measure or things you can perceive. It's that whole thing on the right hand side here. It's just stuff you can look at. But everything under this area, add object here, that's stuff you add to the map, right? Range ring, bearing line, sector, all that stuff it's cool, but it's I don't want to overdo too many things. Yeah, shut her down here pretty quick. So I want to show you guys. This is a search I was on yesterday. We were doing for the state. So this is a search where you see a lot going on here, right? There's all kinds of information on this side. Let me just kind of scroll through some of this. Dispersion angles, there's key locations, there's op period 1, so all the activity that happens in op period 1, op period 2, range rings, buffer assignments, stuff like that, roads. So everything on this left-hand side has been basically organized into folders and kind of categorized in a way that makes it so you can turn entire folders off and collapse a lot of data into itself. But what you're looking at here effectively is a map that we've gone through and we've broken out. So we had a place last seen, we had a direction of travel based on a cell pane. We created there's some statistics, I don't want to get into it, but there's a whole bunch of statistics out there that we can get into at some point called lost person behavior. And it basically says the average hiker will deviate 15 degrees off their course with a 25% probability, right? So we'll throw in this in this case, I think this is a 50% probability. Shows you, so we're gonna really hit these search areas hard. And we've basically taken this section up and divided it into searchable segments so that we can kind of manage the search a little bit. Okay, one thing I want to get into a little bit here, just for features wise, because we don't really want to. SARTopo recently added this ability to, it's kind of like Google Earth, right? I can spin things around, I can look at it in 3D, so if you're trying to visualize, I can take all those layers we were just looking at, and people like this because it's 3D, ooh, right? You can create a beautiful set of layers that you like, that speaks to you for the area you're working in, and you can look at it in a 3D fashion, so you can actually kind of visualize what you're up against. Very handy. I need to get into sharing. This is pretty important before we get into. So, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but there's just so many things to show you. So, I click this little I button here, right? And by the way, you might not have the 3D. Don't worry about that. It's a beta function right now. I'm testing it. So click that little I button right there. You click that little I button on the map that you're in, you'll see this map. And let's say instead of saving it to practice and play, I saved it to my account. Like let's say I'm creating something just for me. But now that I've created it, I want to give people access to it. I will click this link down here called Create Shareable Link, and I can choose what kind of access they have, right? I'll click Update, and OK. Now I have this whole thing at the bottom. Notice, it's really hard to see this, but it says GG97A09. That's the map. That's the map we created, right? Then it adds this whole complicated string of characters at the end of that. It gives me the option to copy it, and it also gives me an option to create a QR code for it. So when we spool up a mission, we'll have people working on stuff in the background. Like I'll typically be, especially now I got a kiddo, I'll be working on things in the background, trying to like throw those statistics up there and plan a little bit. And I will hit the copy button, and I'll send that out in a message. And then I'll also print a QR code. So very simple. Click that, SARTopo map. And this is the map code that we created, right? With an update permission slip to go with it. So we'll print this out. People can walk up, take a picture of that, or scan it with their phone. And now they have access to this map with the ability to update it. And again, update means you can add something to the map, but you can't modify what he did, he can't modify what you did. It's all internal to your own permissions. Does that make sense about how to share this so far? Yeah, it's pretty handy. And also, once you're logged in, if you click your data and then go to practice and play, as long as you're on the team account, you all should see this and take this for a quick test drive. Go to that Your Data button, and then you should see practice at the top. So if we start a new mission, you get a call out, right? It's not going to go to practice and play. It should be under something like GSAR. But what you should know is this is a good place to look, right? You go into your data and see if the map is listed either under practice and play, under Skagit County SAR, under whatever. So it's a good place to go snoop around looking for it. I just want to show you the basic functionality of printing real quick, because we should jump into the app a bit here. So I clicked this button right there. You can see that. It's just just below the information button. So if I click that button, it opens a new tab. I'll try and go quickly here. But I want you guys to be aware of how we create our maps. So it automatically opens this tab up, and it gives me this big red box, right? And I can stretch these corners and create my own custom map. And it'll base it off of the layers that I have selected. And obviously you can still change things and whatnot, but you get an idea of what you can change. You can give it a title. So I can call this Practice Map 1. I can tell it to add grid lines. I can tell it to add lat long lines. Things that you can play with on your own time, but just know that this exists, and this is how we are able to create custom maps. And then at the very bottom of all that, you go ahead and hit the generate button, the generate PDF button. And it takes a second, especially if it's a bigger map or if it's got a lot of stuff it's trying to process. But it will go ahead and generate. It'll generate a map. It'll take 10, 15 seconds usually. Unless we're all playing with the same thing, then it takes a while. But idea being, this is how we've created a lot of maps you guys have seen in our tests. Does anybody here use Gaia? You do? Okay. So once this loads, it creates what is called a geospatially referenced PDF. So if you were to take a picture of this QR code down here that it generates, this QR code doesn't go to the sharing of the map. It goes to literally this PDF. It literally takes you to that link right there, right? So the cool thing is because it's geospatially referenced, you could pull this into Gaia as a layer, and you will have the ability to see yourself. Like, let's say you're driving down this road here. It'll actually show you on that map. Like, this becomes a layer, if that makes sense. So it's a cool feature to have. But obviously, this is how we create our custom maps. Okay, so that is a very fast crash course of SARTopo.